The air crackled with tension as Captain Maya Ellison entered, her leg dragging with a barely audible scrape. The commander of the elite SEAL team just sneered. They sent him a wounded paper pusher for his most critical mission. Captain Maya Ellison, 30 years old, limped into the sterile high-tech briefing room, the so-called sanctum. Her left leg was a disobedient appendage, dragging behind her right with a faint, rhythmic scrape against the polished concrete floor. Her uniform, a standard-issue officer's tunic, hung loosely on a frame that seemed too slight to carry its own weight, let alone the authority of her rank. In her trembling left hand, she clutched a sleek data tablet. 12 of America's most dangerous men, the members of SEAL Team 7, sat around a massive holographic tactical table. They fell silent, their collective gaze sharp and predatory, tracking her uneven gait. Their leader, Commander Thorne, a man built like a monument to military perfection, let out a short, derisive sound. Not quite a laugh, but a sneer-given voice. It cut through the low hum of the servers like a shard of glass. Logistics, Thorne muttered to his second-in-command, his voice dripping with the casual cruelty of a man who equated physical wholeness with competence. They're sending us a broken paper pusher for a combat briefing. The other operators exchanged glances. A few smirked, others shifted uncomfortably, their respect for the chain of command warring with the ingrained warrior's instinct to dismiss the weak. Maya's fingers, slick with a nervous sweat, fumbled. The data tablet slipped, clattering onto the floor. As she bent to retrieve it, her movement was a study in awkward, agonizing effort. A sharp, involuntary hiss of pain escaped her lips as she straightened up, her face pale. The gesture cemented their initial assessment. She was a liability. Her eyes, however, told a different story. As they swept across the holographic map floating in the center of the table, a shimmering, three-dimensional representation of a Syrian compound, something shifted in their depths. For 2 seconds, a flicker of intense, almost predatory recognition ignited within them, a familiarity that was gone as quickly as it appeared. "Your infiltration point is a death trap," she whispered. The words were barely audible, yet they carried a certainty that made the room freeze. The air, already thick with disdain, now solidified with disbelief. Thorne's chair scraped harshly against the floor as he stood abruptly, his 6'4" frame towering over Maya's modest 5'6", casting her in his shadow. His voice, when he spoke, had lost its mocking edge. It was replaced by something colder, more dangerous, the sound of a predator sensing an unexpected threat in what should have been prey. And how would a logistics clerk know that? He demanded, his arms crossed over his massive chest. The question was a challenge, an order for her to justify her presence, her very words. The room held its breath, waiting for the broken paper pusher to crumble. Maya didn't answer him directly. Instead of wilting under his oppressive gaze, she straightened her spine, the pain in her leg a distant hum against the sudden surge of adrenaline. She limped deliberately to the corner of the room, a position that allowed her to observe everyone while keeping her back protected by the wall. It was a subtle, almost unconscious maneuver, but it spoke of an ingrained tactical awareness that no supply clerk should possess. Senior Chief Leo Gallo, a man whose 23 years of combat were etched into the lines of his weathered face, noticed it immediately. He'd seen that move before in the wild badlands of Afghanistan and the claustrophobic alleys of Iraq. It was the stance of a survivor, a hunter. He filed the observation away, his instincts, honed by decades of life-or-death decisions, screaming that there was more to this woman than her personnel file suggested. He earned his call sign, Eagle Eye, for a reason. The briefing was supposed to be a routine final check for the extraction of General Wallace, a 4-star commander missing for 72 hours. His convoy had been ambushed, and intel placed him in a compound controlled by a vicious militia known for their sophisticated Russian-influenced tactics. The compound has 3 entry points. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, the team's breacher, began, pointing to the eastern approach on hologram. Intel suggests minimal security here. It's our best bet for a quiet insertion. He was a solid operator, known for his methodical planning, but Maya was already shaking her head. The gesture was almost imperceptible, but in the hyper-focused atmosphere, it was as loud as a gunshot. "You have a problem with the plan, Captain?" Thorne's voice was dangerously low, his patience worn to a thread. This woman had been in his sanctum for less than 10 minutes and was systematically dismantling a plan his team had spent 2 days building. Maya limped to the holographic table. Each step was a testament to her resolve, a battle against the screaming nerves in her leg. She raised a trembling hand and pointed to a section of the satellite image that showed nothing but empty desert terrain. "Kalashnikov placement here," she said, her finger tapping a precise location. "Here, another tap, and here, a third." The eastern approach looks clear because they wanted to look clear. It's a kill box designed to funnel you into overlapping fields of fire. The room erupted in a low murmur of skeptical voices. How could she possibly know that from an image that showed nothing but sand and rock? Chief Warrant Officer Bennett, the team's intelligence specialist, pulled up the latest high-resolution thermal imagery on his personal tablet, zooming in on the coordinates Maya had indicated. His expression shifted from skepticism to disbelief, then to professional shock. He saw the faint, almost invisible heat signatures of concealed positions, subtle disturbances their initial, sophisticated analysis had completely missed. "She's right," Bennett said slowly, his voice laced with a grudging respect. "Thermal pass from last night shows heat signatures exactly where she marked them." He looked up at Maya, his eyes wide. "How did you see that?" Maya returned to her corner, her tactical repositioning so natural it seemed like breathing. "The shadows are wrong," she said simply. "When you've spent enough time looking at the world from 1,000 yards away, you learn to spot the difference between natural terrain and a man-made lie." There was a weight to her words, a chilling authenticity that suggested personal experience far beyond analyzing supply routes. The dynamic in a room had fundamentally shifted. The SEALs, the undisputed masters of their craft, were now second-guessing their own intelligence, their own instincts, all because of a limping logistics officer and her cryptic pronouncements. When they played the intercepted radio chatter from the militia, Maya's reaction was immediate and visceral. Her hand tightened on her tablet until her knuckles shone white. For a fleeting moment, her mask of calm professionalism slipped, revealing something raw, ancient, and dangerous beneath. "That's not a local accent," she said, her voice tight with a controlled fury. "The commander is Chechen, former VV, based on his tactical terminology. He's using old Soviet-era protocols, adapted for modern insurgency." Lieutenant Jackson, the team's linguist who spoke 4 Middle Eastern dialects fluently, rewound the audio. He had initially dismissed the accent as a generic regional variant. But now, guided by Maya's observation, the subtle phonetic markers, the specific cadence, were unmistakable. It was the sound of a man trained in a different, colder war. "How many supply clerks analyze enemy comms traffic?" Jackson asked, more to himself than to anyone else. But Maya had already retreated back into her defensive silence. Thorne slammed his hand on the table, the sharp crack making everyone except Maya flinch. "Enough games," he roared. "Who are you, really?" The question hung in the air like a live grenade. For a moment, it seemed Maya might finally answer. Her hand moved unconsciously to her left shoulder, her fingers tracing the outline of what appeared to be old scar tissue beneath her uniform. Senior Chief Gallo's gaze narrowed. He noticed something else, a detail that made his blood run cold. Partially hidden by her sleeve was the faint glint of a metal dog tag chain. But the tag itself, just visible at the collar, wasn't standard issue. The serial number prefix was one he hadn't seen in years, not since it was retired after Operation Crimson Sand, a classified mission 3 years ago that had gone catastrophically wrong, resulting in the official death of a legendary operator. "I'm exactly who my file says I am," Maya replied, her voice flat, but her eyes told a different story. They held the kind of 1,000-yard stare that came from carrying memories that woke you at 3 a.m., drenched in the cold sweat of a past that refused to die. Suddenly, she stood, her movements sharp despite her disability. "You need to abort this mission," she said, her voice flat and absolute, addressing Thorne directly. "This isn't a standard prisoner extraction. It's a trap. It's bait, designed specifically for American Special Operations Forces. They know you're coming." "Based on what evidence?" Thorne challenged, though a crack had appeared in his armor of skepticism. In his 15 years of leading SEALs, he had learned to recognize the difference between analysis and experience. Maya wasn't guessing. She knew, from a small, worn leather-bound journal, her personal log, not a military notebook. She pulled a faded photograph. She handled it with a reverence reserved for a sacred object, placing it on the table where everyone could see. It showed a younger, harder version of herself in full sniper, ghillie suit, standing next to a man whose face was obscured by tactical gear. But what made every SEAL in the room lean forward was the background. The same compound they were planning to assault, photographed from what was clearly a sniper's hide. "Because I've been there before," she said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of old ghosts. 3 years ago, and the man who's holding General Wallace is the same one who... She stopped, her jaw clenching as she fought for control. Before she could finish, the door to the sanctum burst open. Colonel Jennings, the base commander, strode in, his presence immediately commanding attention. He was a man in his 50s, with the kind of weary gravitas that came from decades of sending young men and women into harm's way. His eyes swept the room, cataloging the extraordinary tension before landing on Maya. The color drained from his face. Recognition, followed by sheer, unadulterated shock, washed over him. "Nix!" The name escaped his lips in a choked whisper, yet it carried to every corner of the room. "My God, you're supposed to be dead." The name hit the SEALs like a physical blow. Nix, the legend, a ghost in the special operations community. A sniper whose confirmed kill count was so high it was permanently classified, rumored to be near 50. The operator who could put a bullet through the ace of spades at 1,000 yards in a crosswind. The hero who had vanished during Operation Crimson Sand, presumed killed in action, posthumously awarded the Silver Star. Maya's carefully maintained composure finally shattered. With trembling fingers, she rolled up her right sleeve. A puckered, vicious scar ran from her wrist to her elbow, the kind of wound left by a bullet traveling the length of the bone. But it was the small tattoo next to it that made Senior Chief Gallo gasp. It was an Ouroboros, a snake eating its own tail, the symbol of infinity and rebirth. Woven into the design, almost invisible, was the number 47. Each number represented a life taken in service to her country, a burden carried forever. "I prefer Maya now, sir," she said, her voice steady despite the single tear that threatened to spill. "Nix died in Syria 3 years ago. At least, that's what the reports say." She looked directly at Thorne, and for the first time since entering the room, she allowed him to see who she really was. Not a broken clerk, but a warrior who had sacrificed everything for a mission that had haunted her ever since. The atmosphere transformed. The SEALs were no longer looking at a disabled logistics officer. They were in the presence of a living legend, someone whose operational record was the stuff of hushed, reverent stories told at Fort Bragg and Coronado. 3 years ago, Maya began, her voice taking on the clinical tone of a formal debrief as she moved to the holographic display, her limp somehow less pronounced now that the weight of her secret was gone. Operation Crimson Sand. General Wallace was conducting a diplomatic meeting with local tribal leaders. My spotter, Sergeant Alex Ramos, and I were providing overwatch from a position 800 meters out. She marked the position on the map, her movements precise. The meet was compromised. 40-plus hostiles surrounded the compound before we could extract the general. Ramos wanted to abort, call in air support, but that would have taken 30 minutes minimum. Wallace had maybe 5 before they breached his position. The room was utterly silent, every operator hanging on her words. This was the kind of moment that defined careers, that separated good soldiers from legendary ones. "I made a decision," she continued, her voice growing softer. I broke cover, moved to a secondary position that exposed me to enemy fire, but gave me clear shots on the hostile leadership. The first 3 targets went down clean. It caused enough confusion for Wallace's security detail to begin evacuation. But breaking cover meant they could triangulate your position, Rodriguez said, his tactical mind racing. You became the primary target. Maya nodded, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. That was the plan. Draw their fire. Keep them focused on me while Ramos guided Wallace's team to the extraction point. What I didn't expect was their counter-sniper. Former VDV. He was good. Very good. She unconsciously touched her left shoulder. First round caught me here. Through and through. Spun me around, but didn't put me down. Her hand moved to her left thigh. Second round hit here. Shattered the femur. That's when things got interesting. Interesting, Thorne asked, his earlier antagonism a forgotten memory. I couldn't move, she said, her voice gone flat. The way soldiers talk when reliving moments branded onto their souls. Couldn't retreat, but I could still shoot. So I stayed. Kept engaging targets, making myself as big a threat as possible. Every hostile focused on me was one not chasing the general. Chief Bennett, his face pale, was reading from a newly declassified summary of the mission on his tablet. The after-action report says the sniper position took sustained fire for over 6 hours. 63 confirmed impacts on the position. Artillery, RPGs, heavy machine gun fire. They leveled the building. 6 hours and 17 minutes. Maya corrected automatically. I counted. When you're bleeding out, time becomes very specific. The key was making them think there were multiple shooters. Change position slightly. Vary the rate of fire. Use Ramos's rifle when mine overheated. Create the illusion of a full sniper team. Your spotter, Ramos. Jackson began, then stopped as he saw the flicker of pain in Maya's eyes. David stayed with me for the first 2 hours. I ordered him to leave. Told him I was dead anyway. Might as well make it count. He refused. I had to threaten to shoot him myself to get him to go. A single tear finally escaped, tracing a path down her cheek. He made it 400 meters before a mortar round took him. I watched him die through my scope while still engaging targets. Couldn't even stop to mourn. The weight of her sacrifice settled over the room like a shroud. This was a choice beyond bravery. It was a calculated, agonizing martyrdom. How did you survive? Bennett asked, his analytical mind needing to solve the impossible equation. Maya laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. I didn't. Not really. When the firing stopped, when Wallace's convoy was clear, I played dead. Lay in my own blood for another 6 hours while they searched the rubble. Ever try not to scream while someone kicks your shattered leg to see if you're still alive? The silence was absolute. They left before dawn, she continued. A local scavenger found me. Thought I was a corpse until I grabbed his wrist. I convinced him to get me to a Red Cross station for the reward money. She looked at Colonel Jennings. Phantom needed to stay dead. The counter-sniper escaped. He knew my face, my tactics. If word got out that I survived, he'd come looking. So I became Maya Ellison, logistics officer. She then played the final segment of the intercepted audio. The Chechen's voice emerged, calm and chilling, speaking accented English. And tell her American friends that Nix's ghost is welcome to try again. The implications hit everyone at once. This was a personal invitation, a trap laid specifically for her. Gear up, Thorne ordered his team, his voice filled with a new, unwavering respect. He turned to Maya. Ma'am, we'd be honored if you'd run tactical oversight from here. But Maya was already shaking her head. Your approach is still wrong. You're thinking like sledgehammers. This enemy is a scalpel. It requires patience and deception. She moved to the equipment locker, running her hand over a Macmillan TAC 338 rifle. I need to ask you something. Do you trust me? One by one, the SEALs nodded. Even Thorne. Then we do this my way, Maya said, her voice ringing with an authority that transcended rank. And that means I go with you. The protests were immediate, but she cut them off. You're right. I can't run. Can't fast rope. Can't do half of what you're trained for. But that's exactly why they won't expect me. They're looking for Nyx, the perfect sniper. They're not looking for a crippled logistics officer. A cold, hard smile crossed her face. Sometimes, your greatest weakness is your best camouflage. Over the next 6 hours, Maya transformed the mission. It became a masterpiece of misdirection. The main team would create a noisy, aggressive diversion on the eastern approach, playing directly into the enemy's expectations. Meanwhile, she and Jackson, her designated spotter and legs, would infiltrate from an unexpected angle. On the flight to the insertion point, the SEALs watch her work, mesmerized. She dissected the compound with the precision of a surgeon, her mind a supercomputer of angles, wind speeds, and human behavior. At 0200 hours, under a moonless, overcast sky, they moved out. Every step sent a jolt of fire up Maya's damaged leg, but she used the pain, channeling it into a razor-sharp focus. Just as she predicted, the diversion drew the enemy's main force. Through her scope, she watched them rush to defensive positions. But her eyes were on the bigger picture. "They're moving Wallace," she said suddenly. "Southern exit. This whole defense is just buying time." She saw them loading the general into a vehicle. He was walking, unrestrained. Then she saw it. The subtle way he favored his left side. The exact mirror of her own injury. They tortured him, she realized, a cold fury rising within her. Same injury. They were mocking me. The vehicle started moving. In seconds, it would be out of range. 900 meters. Moving target. A stiff crosswind. A shot that was impossible for a healthy sniper, let alone one with her injuries. "Can't be done," Jackson whispered, reading her intent. Maya smiled, the first genuine expression she'd shown all night. "You're right. Nyx couldn't make this shot. Not anymore." She settled into her shooting position, but instead of fighting her disabilities, she embraced them. The tremor in her left hand became part of her breathing rhythm. The pain in her leg grounded her in the moment. She dialed in the adjustments by feel, muscle memory transcending broken nerves. She found her target, not Wallace, but the driver. One shot, the rifle fired. 900 meters away, the vehicle's windshield starred. The driver slumped. The vehicle swerved to a halt. "Driver down," Jackson confirmed, his voice filled with awe. The main team responded instantly, pushing through the disrupted defenses and securing the general. As the extraction helicopter arrived, a lone fighter emerged from a hidden position, an RPG on his shoulder aimed at the lead aircraft. No time to aim. No time for calculations. Maya fired from the hip. The fighter crumpled. Strong hands pulled her onto the helicopter as her leg finally gave out. She found herself face to face with General Wallace. His eyes widened in recognition. "Nyx," he breathed over the rotor noise. "Negative, sir," Maya replied formally. "Captain Maya Ellison, Logistics Corps." Wallace studied her for a long moment. The trembling hands, the ruined leg, the eyes that had seen too much. Then, slowly, deliberately, he rendered a perfect salute. One by one, every SEAL in the helicopter followed suit. 12 warriors, honoring a sacrifice that had saved their leader's life twice. "You gave everything for me," Wallace said, his voice thick with emotion. Maya managed a tired smile as the helicopter lifted off. "I let them shoot me again, sir," she said. "That's what we do." As the compound disappeared below, she closed her eyes. She wasn't Nyx anymore. But tonight, she had proven something more important. Heroes aren't defined by their physical perfection, but by their willingness to sacrifice. The story of that night would never be fully told in an official report. But at Fort Bragg, a secret was kept. Whenever a member of SEAL Team 7 passed the limping logistics officer in a hallway, they would stop, stand a little straighter, and give a subtle, respectful nod. It was a silent salute, a quiet acknowledgement of the warrior hidden in plain sight, a hero defined not by her legend, but by her scars. In your life, have you ever encountered someone who was completely underestimated, only for them to prove everyone wrong with their hidden strength? Share your story in the comments below, and please, comment with respect for everyone's experience. If this story of sacrifice and courage touched your heart, consider subscribing and sharing it so that more stories of unsung heroes can be heard.